Welcome back to the Severe MMA YouTube channel. It is yours truly, Theo Lander, not joined by Ian O'Neill as I typically am. He's actually going to be off for the rest of the season because he's getting married and will be enjoying his honeymoon shortly after. So just want to give him a big congratulations. But for the time being, looks like it'll be just me breaking down these episodes. Perhaps we mix in some other people. We get some other faces that you may recognize involved in the mix here. Who knows? That is all up in the air for now. But for the time being, we're going to focus tonight on episode 7 of The Ultimate Fighter season 32. It was a great episode, in my opinion. We had our main event, if you want to call it that, was between Edwin Cooper and Myron Santos of Brazil, two LFA products. Turned out to be a great fight, and spoiler alert, it was the first 3-round fight of this season. So looking forward to breaking that down. But we'll start here at the beginning of the episode. Really just begins out with another sort of intimate conversation as we have had to start a lot of these episodes so far this season. Edwin is talking to Giannis about his feelings on this fight and if he's nervous or not. He's talking about his game plan, how he wants to strike heavy and then clinch against the cage, particularly heavy. We immediately begin reflecting back onto Cooper's drinking, which has become a really big theme of the season, despite only really focusing on it for a few moments in that previous episode. He has cut back since then, so I want to make that very clear. His teammate was able to get in there and sort of get his head straight. It's also easy to say in our position as well, like, hey, like Edwin Cooper's doing this. Like, it's very, very easy for me sitting here to be like, oh, why would you be drinking in this house? I think it's important for us to all have the perspective of, as a MMA fighter today, you have to have a very unique mindset. You have to be a very particular type of person that might be hard for the average person to understand. On top of that, they are fighting for their opportunity to make it into the UFC, the big leagues, the big show, the thing they've always wanted since they began their career in this sport. And they have these unique pressures of living in the house in this tough competition, right, to make weight over and over again and live with the guys you're going to be competing against. It would be very easy to be in my position and say, Edwin, you should not be doing that at all, blah, blah, blah. But uh, I'm willing to give him a little bit of elbow room here, especially since he did end up cleaning up his act afterwards. So all is well that ends well. It seems like he's on the straight and narrow here, and we do see him sort of getting into a better mindset whenever he's talking to the camera. In between scenes, he's saying things about how he has to get more focused and how much he has to really appreciate this opportunity, which are all good signs of a healthy fighter going deeper into this competition. Uh, and then shortly after, we even see him in the gym preparing for this fight, and Shevchenko is the one who gets in his ear and tells him, like, you have to put pressure on Santos and you have to get him down. Previously when he was talking to Giannis, he was only talking about, striking heavy, making sure that he gets in his face, and then clinching heavy against the cage. There wasn't much talk about him, like, getting him down. And it seems like Shevchenko is the one who sort of put that in his mind. And it's good advice from Shevchenko because if you look at the fighter in Myron Santos, an explosive striker with incredible kicking ranges. He's got a very powerful low leg kick, good combinations up top as well as a good stiff jab. Like if you're gonna beat this guy, you take him where he's least comfortable, and that would be the ground. And a guy like Edwin Cooper, who is so well rounded, makes all the sense in the world to try to execute that kind of game plan. So I was happy to see Shevchenko do that. It seems like the further along we get into the season, you start to appreciate the mind of Shevchenko a lot more, and what she's learned thus far in her career. We did have a bit of a rough start to the season when everyone on Twitter who hadn't watched the episode really was going off on her for not letting them drink water during training, saying that's dangerous, and of course it is. But I just think it's a nice thing to see the knowledge of Shevchenko really leak through deeper into the season. It's really had an effect on these guys, which is a big thing for them, especially if they're early in their career. On the topic of Myron Santos, we did get to see a little bit of his introduction into the MMA world. We went back to his childhood home in Brazil. It's a very small hut that he lived in with his mother. His mother's a really big theme for him. It's something that he keeps bringing up here in his introductory sort of scene. Um, Support is the main word he keeps bringing up in regards to his mother. She always has the medals and the trophies, whether it's something he won playing soccer or some other random sport growing up. She would always put them on display, and it seems like that was a really big deal for him. And then this sort of translates into his adult years when he's deciding to make the move to Vegas to pursue an MMA career full time. She's sort of sitting on the porch step there of the house saying, I have to support my son to chase his dreams, and she's getting emotional. You can tell that the bond between those two is particularly strong. We didn't get that deep into that, but it's clear that his motivation for fighting, a lot of it is family driven, and his mother is a very, very strong figure in his life. So Santos, he actually moved to Las Vegas in September of 2021. He's living in a house just outside of Las Vegas with a bunch of roommates. Basically, he doesn't own a apartment or doesn't own the house or anything like that. He's still in the beginning stages of his career. On the side, he is walking dogs and washing vans, doing like small odd jobs like that part time just to pay the bills between fights. He's a very interesting guy who's a very hard worker. He also brings up that he brings or he lives with his wife, who he met in 2016. She sort of laments towards the end that that they're both on this crazy journey, and they're about this insane part of their lives where they've moved across the world for her boyfriend to chase his dreams and be on the big screen and all these things. So it's pretty inspiring stuff to see where he has come from. He's currently training at Extreme Couture, which are great hands to be in with Coach Eric Nixick. At this point, Santos is just 23 years old. He's very young for the fight game. And despite being 23 years old, he has 14 professional fights, an impressive record of 13-1, not fighting slouches. This guy is coming up through the ranks mostly through LFA. Since he made the transition, obviously, to Vegas full time in 2021. LFA is a local promotion. Makes all the sense in the world to not only fight for them, but also to train under Eric Nixick. A very mature sign of a young fighter who knows exactly what he needs to get to the next step. So all good things from that angle. Um, yeah, and then eventually we cut back to the house after that small detour, and Edwin Cooper is having these photos go around. He's showing his teammates of his girlfriend and his grandfather. He's finally got a piece of home. He says he even gets a little teary eyed in the bed as he's sort of going to bed for the night, and he's looking at the photos. A lot of emotions for these guys who, again, are being kept away from their families, are in a very high pressure situation. So he brings up how his grandfather has always been for them and how his girlfriend has been there for him since the beginning of the fighting career. She's always supported him. For a large chunk of this episode, we learned about the people that are holding up these fighters more than really like their story, which was a really unique take that I appreciated from the production team. I didn't think that they would really go that way. But it was refreshing. Cooper also trains out of Jackson Wink here. So we got yet another tour of Jackson Wink and their dormitories and their medical facilities inside the gym. Seems like a great place to go for any young fighter who wants to learn. Jackson Winks had a lot of experience in high level championship fights, especially with the likes of John Jones, who famously trained there for years. So yeah, yet another guy out of that gym. I think it's only positives to be working with those fellows over there. He's also an LFA product. Cooper is also fighting in the LFA promotion. He is 6-1, although he notes very importantly, he does not believe the one should count. He, I assume, must have had a meeting with the Sugar State Athletic Commission to get that erased. He believes it was an early stoppage. They didn't show us any highlights of this. I do vaguely remember the stoppage from looking into his history before when we did the preview for this. I didn't recall it being particularly early, but again, fighters have different perspectives than us. Maybe I would feel differently if I was there on the floor. I digress. Anyways, we sort of got to around like 10:20 Eastern time, and they were already weighing in. So right off the bat, this is not going to be a first round finish. This is not going to be a quick night in the office. This is going to be a deep one. And it was pretty easy to tell as well, based on the time, that we would see a sudden death round. Because if it was 2 rounds, it would only be a 10-minute fight. And why would you be weighing in before the halfway point of the show? But thankfully, they did weigh in early. They both made weight. And we move on to the fight, which was actually a pretty good one, if I do say so myself. I actually ended up quite enjoying this fight, although I didn't think I would. So in round one, Cooper shoots pretty early. He wasn't able to get it. Myron's then able to crack him slightly, like right after that. Coop then eventually does get him down in a single leg, takes his back immediately, has some solid ground and pound, doesn't like exactly have the full back, but essentially has halfway of that position taken. So he's going over the top with punches to the side of the head a lot. He's doing some pretty good damage there. Coop slowly has to return him back to the mat as Santos is rising progressively against the cage. So good mat return there from Cooper as well in the first round. It's a lot of stalling once they return to the mat for the second time. It seems like it wasn't a ton of action from Cooper, to be honest, in that time frame before, but it did seem as if he was a little bit fatigued, a little bit tired. So maybe he was just trying to get through the round. He's easily got this round um, pretty wrapped up here. So it really wasn't too urgent for him to do any more damage from that point. They got back up on the feet with 40 seconds to go. Some good low kicks from Cooper. Santos then, with 2 seconds left, there was a wild running flying knee, which misses terribly. And then he throws an all out wheel kick as hard as he can, loses his balance terribly, misses by a lot. Really showed like some desperation in his game, which I think was huge heading into the second round. When you're only having 2 rounds, if they're not tied at the end of it, the urgency for these guys is a lot higher. And Santos, good fight IQ, realized that he was down for a while, realized he's not going to be winning that round on the scorecards, has to do something there to make a difference in the fight. I give him credit for going for it, but it was ill-advised at the time. An easy round to score, easy 10-9 for Edwin Cooper. I thought he most clearly did all the work in that round. Now, round two, this is where things get interesting. This is where things get very interesting. So back on the topic of the drinking, I didn't really think about any of that. Par from when they brought it up at the beginning, we sort of gloss over it, we get over it, we start to learn more about these guys. And then the second round begins, and I'm looking at the body language from Cooper, and it's almost as if he's frustrated by the feints that Santos is throwing. Like he doesn't really see what he wants to be seeing. He's having a tough time getting inside and getting into a rhythm. And slowly but surely, you start to look at this guy. You go, is this guy just tired? He didn't look extremely fatigued, but as all of a sudden you're starting to think like, man, maybe this guy's head isn't in the right spot. Maybe all that drinking earlier in the show is sort of catching up with you now. Now that you're getting later into a fight that could sort of turn to a war of nutrition, maybe you're a bit dehydrated compared to your opponent because of all that drinking. Maybe that is sort of catching up with you in this moment. But all of a sudden, when I'm not seeing him being as active, that is sort of where my mind went. Right or wrong, um, it's just something that I decided to bring up in my mind. But eventually, we get into the second round. Yeah, Cooper cannot get inside. He starts trying to throw some quick combinations, and he's finding a little bit of success with that in the beginning of the round. But suddenly, Santos is the one who's controlling it. He's sending Cooper back the entire time, throwing good combinations. He's throwing heavy leg kicks as well. He is damaging that lead leg of Edwin Cooper. And Cooper, as the round is going on, is getting more and more uncomfortable on that lead leg. He's trying to put less and less pressure on it. He's not doing a great job of checking any of these kicks either. I don't recall him ever even actually successfully checking a kick, to be honest with you. But yeah, Santos just looked much fresher. He ends up, halfway through the round, he starts mixing up shots to the body really nicely. Really, really sneaky lead left hook to the body that Santos was landing all throughout this fight, which again, even more taxing on your gas tank, can lead your opponent to go to even deeper waters. Loved that from Santos. That jab was money. He was jabbing his face off this entire round, controlling the entire fight, just kept him on the edge of his lead hand the entire time. He ends up actually even getting a big knee up top too, because Edwin Cooper at this point is shooting for his life. He's just trying to get this guy down at any means necessary. And then during one of those exchanges, he actually goes up top with a big knee and catches Cooper pretty decently on the head. So yeah, he even is starting to sneak in some uppercuts as well on these takedown attempts. He's always making contact with Cooper's head when Cooper goes for the takedowns. I mean, it's actually really impressive. It's really hard to hit a guy who's moving in front of you. It's really, really hard to hit a guy who is shooting on your legs and changing levels at the same time. So the fact that he's able to hit him at that high of a clip, extremely impressive, especially for a young fighter, only 23 years old, like we mentioned earlier. So yeah, very impressed in the second round with Santos. Um, I thought it was interesting as well. I thought this towards the end of the round. It was like Shevchenko at the beginning of the episode kept saying that she thought Edwin Cooper was much stronger and much more powerful, thought that his shots had more pop on them. At this point in the fight, it didn't seem that way. It didn't seem that way at all. And maybe the fatigue is a big factor in that, but man, every time Santos was hitting Cooper, he got a big reaction out of him. I mean, the contrast and the reaction that these guys were getting when their strikes were landing on their opponents was a very big difference. So, a very easy round to score. Again, two completely different rounds. They felt like completely different fights, honestly, the way that they went. Very different paces, different guys controlling the fight. An easy 10-9 for Santos. And we head into the sudden death third round. Now, the Apex, the UFC Apex, I have been there. It's a very nice facility. I could imagine during a fight night or a contender series or something akin to that, the energy in the Apex is not at the level of a T-Mobile or a Madison Square Garden. Of course not. There's just not enough people in there. People are fighting in a warehouse at this point. It's just the atmosphere is dead. I did not feel that way when we head into this third round. This third round, the volume in the apex turned up to 11. Like even though we know it's just the corners yelling, it almost sounds and feels like a crowd. You could hear the urgency in their voices. You could feel how tense it was, and that was very palpable through the screen. So, a rare moment where I actually enjoyed the atmosphere of the apex. And of course, the Ultimate Fighter has always sort of done the thing where they have more sensitive cameras towards the cage. They can get those actual like action shot sounds a lot better. So that combined with the atmosphere of the coaches in the apex and also the teammates who are sort of watching off to the side as well are getting very vocal at this point as well. It was a great viewing experience. I thoroughly enjoyed it. On to the actual third round at hand. Santos again opens up the third round. He's being told by Diego Lopez in his corner, take the first couple 15, 20 seconds to keep the distance and make sure he doesn't get the takedown because he's going to be desperate for that. He opens up this third round doing just that. His feints are really bothering Cooper. He can't get settled into a rhythm, and he continues to batter that lead leg even further. He even cracks him up top with another 1-2 combo. Cooper just keeps getting countered over and over again, which was not something that I expected from him. Of course, we mentioned that he should have taken this to the ground to have the best opportunity to win over Santos, but he's no slouch on the feet himself. I mean, he can crack with the best of them over at LFA, and we've seen that. So to see Santos having the level of success that he was just strictly countering Cooper's onward attacks was a bit surprising to me, but of course impressive for the 23-year-old from Brazil. Um, so Cooper is getting countered over and over again. Then all of a sudden, he counters Santos as a pretty good shot here. Santos loses his footing temporarily, doesn't really get rocked per se, but he definitely does get his rhythm disrupted quite a bit. And then this is Cooper's moment in the round where he recognizes he has to take over. Suddenly, he's the one who's leading the dance. He's not doing much damage, but he then goes all out, presses out for a double leg takedown. He sells out for it. He is not able to get it. This is when the volume in the apex went up a notch. Some more tasty body shots by Santos soon after. He defended another takedown against the fence. And then we get to basically a minute left in the fight. Santos has to defend his single leg once again. He does very well. He sprawled out expertly on a lot of these takedowns, especially in the third round. He did an excellent job of keeping him off him. But eventually, with about 38 seconds to go, Cooper finally gets a takedown. He gets a good single leg in there, and he gets him down against the cage. They ended up in a bit of like a more neutral standing clinch up against the cage for the final 15 seconds. Cooper doesn't do anything with either of these positions. There was 0 strikes that he threw, no attempted submissions. He didn't even try to advance position. So really, you can't really give him the benefit of the doubt on this third round at all. I felt that it was actually a very easy round to score. I thought that Santos clearly won it 10-9, and of course, overall in the fight 29-28. Cooper seemed to think that he had won, which is something that we see a lot. But apparently a lot of people also thought the same way that were there. Like Shevchenko, the team kept telling him that they thought that he won the third round. But eventually, we do get to the official judge's decision. They announced it is a split decision, and it is going to go in favor of Myron Santos. So Santos wins it by a split decision. Shortly after, I should say, says it's one of the best moments of his life. Probably a really good feeling to start the tournament, get that first one out of the way. Also, something that I think people weren't really touching on is that, Edwin Cooper is a very hard guy to get as your first assignment in this tournament. If you think about like a classic tournament bracket, like March Madness, it goes the first seed faces the 16th seed, and then so on and so forth. In the Ultimate Fighter House, it is the Wild West. The coaches just sort of draft the teams and then they randomly pick these fights. So you could have like the top two guys in the house facing each other in the first week, and that's just what it is. Not to say that these are number one and number two; they are up there. But I think we do have to give Santos a lot of credit here for not only battling back from adversity, but doing so against the older, more experienced guy who had the height advantage on him as well. That's something we didn't talk about either. Cooper was 6'1" there. Santos is 5'9", so that's a big difference to come up with. And he done well. He done well against some tough competition. So shout out to Myron Santos here. He fought very well, and I can't wait to see him going forward in this tournament. We then get some shots in the back in the locker room after the fight. Shevchenko very bluntly tells Cooper, which I thought was pretty I shouldn't say surprising at this point because it's kind of like who we've learned her to be. But it was definitely different from what we're used to seeing from coaches typically in this situation. She straight up tells him that he lost because he didn't do anything in the second round. Um, it was definitely around that I don't know if he consciously took it off, but he absolutely didn't do anything in that round to, garner a winning scorecard. She sort of touches on, you got a little bit fatigued. The game plan, the ferocity in it was a little bit inconsistent. So that's something that he has to work on is at the middle part of his game. She says that it's very important when you go up in the first round to have a strong second round because in the third round, no matter what, you're going to be a lot more tired, and it's going to be a lot harder to will that third round win out of you than it would be to do so in the second round when you have momentum to start. But then she tops it off by saying she thought that he won the fight overall because she thought he won the third round. I mean, I honestly I'm really confused by this, and maybe if Ian was here, he would be able to tell me why people think this. But I did not see anything from Edwin Cooper in that third round that would, give him the nod on the judges' scorecards. Perhaps I have to watch it again. Maybe I missed something while I was taking notes on the actual fight itself. But, I digress. Anyways, the one that we have all been waiting for, Ireland's own Paddy McCrory, is finally up. He's finally going to fight. I guess they saved the best for last. I don't know why they would wait this long for Paddy McCrory. I feel like a lot of people are sort of tuning in for this because of Paddy McCrory, and those people may have just stopped watching at this point. But he is going to be fighting Mark Hume in what Dana White has described again as a striker versus grappler matchup. Now he does go into a little bit more detail here. He calls Patty a brawler, which is I guess sort of tells people that he'll have an exciting style. But like the lack of promotion, the lack of build up, the lack of you gotta tune in next week to see this. Like I don't understand why they're not building these fights for the upcoming episodes as much. Not really that big of a deal, just kind of nitpicky by me, if anything. But yeah, that was really it for episode 7. Good episode all overall. Zero house drama. We had a slight tick up when Edwin Cooper opened up the liquor cabinet. Since he has closed that, we've had zero issues in the house. Nobody's fighting anybody, which I guess is a good thing. But for the viewers, maybe not. So yeah, we will see you back here. Same place, same time, the Severe MMA YouTube channel for our breakdown on Tuesday night for episode 8 of The Ultimate Fighter Season 32. Until then, be good.